They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from someone you'd die for. Tonight, Elara Vance learned that truth in front of 300 witnesses. Her lover, the man she'd bled for, fought beside, trusted with everything, just accused her of treachery. Not in private, not with mercy, but here, in the ceremonial hall, under the eyes of the entire Ashenmore pack, where shame sticks like tar and forgiveness doesn't exist. She's about to lose everything, her rank, her home, maybe her life. But what the pack doesn't know, what he doesn't know, is that some things can't be taken, only awakened. If you want to see how a broken woman becomes unstoppable, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Let's go. The hall smelled like pine smoke and old blood. Elara stood in the center of the stone floor, wrists bound with iron-laced rope that burned against her skin. The metal threads woven through the fibers weren't there for decoration. They were there to suppress the wolf, to keep it caged beneath human skin. Every shift of her arm sent fresh sparks of pain up to her shoulders. 300 pack members formed a half circle around her, their faces lit by torchlight mounted on the ancient stone walls. The Ashenmore Ceremonial Hall had witnessed judgments for 2 centuries, and the weight of all that history pressed down like a physical thing. Faces blurred together in the flickering light. Some she recognized, some she didn't, but the expressions were universal: pity, disgust, schadenfreude. That particular flavor of satisfaction people wore when they watched someone else's world crumble and felt grateful it wasn't theirs. She kept her chin up. Barely. Her legs wanted to shake, but she locked her knees and refused to give them the satisfaction. At the front of the crowd, seated in the carved oak chair reserved for the pack's second-in-command, was Dorian Hale. Her Dorian. Or the man she'd thought was hers. His dark hair was tied back in the way she used to fix it for him. The leather cord she'd braided herself still wrapped around the knot. His jaw was set, the muscle there twitching the way it did when he was tense. His gray eyes, the ones that used to soften when they landed on her, were cold as midwinter stone. He looked at her like she was a stranger, like she was an inconvenience, like she was nothing. 2 days ago, he'd kissed her in the forest clearing where they always met. He'd pushed her hair back from her face and told her they'd announce their bonding at the next full moon. He'd promised her a future. Now he was the one who'd dragged her here in chains. Elara Vance. The voice belonged to Councilman Garrett, a wiry man in his 50s with a scar splitting his left eyebrow and cold eyes that had never liked her. He stood to Dorian's left, hands clasped behind his back, chin tilted up in that self-important way politicians had when they were about to ruin someone's life and enjoy it. You stand accused of falsifying your bloodline records, deceiving this pack's leadership, and exploiting a rank you did not earn through legitimate heritage. A murmur rippled through the crowd like wind through dry grass. Elara's stomach twisted, but she kept her face blank. She'd learned early that showing fear in Ashenmore was like bleeding in front of sharks. They circled, they attacked, they didn't stop until there was nothing left. These charges, Garrett continued, his voice carrying that rehearsed quality of someone who'd practiced this speech, were brought forward by Second Dorian Hale, who discovered significant discrepancies in your family documentation during a routine review of pack records. Do you deny these charges? Elara's throat felt like she'd swallowed glass. She looked at Dorian, searching for something, anything, that resembled the man who'd held her 2 nights ago. The man who'd traced the scar on her shoulder and told her it made her beautiful. The man who'd promised to stand beside her no matter what came. But his face stayed carved from ice. He didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't show a single crack in that mask. I don't deny what's in the records, Elara said carefully, forcing her voice to stay steady. But I didn't falsify anything. My mother submitted those documents when I was 6 years old before she died. I didn't even know there were... Ignorance, Garrett cut in smoothly, like he'd been waiting for exactly this response, is not innocence. The law does not bend for those who claim they didn't know they were breaking it. Convenient excuse, though, someone muttered from the crowd. Laughter rippled outward. Not loud, but enough. Enough to make Elara's cheeks burn. Dorian didn't laugh. He didn't even react. He just sat there, hands resting on the arms of his chair like a king on a throne, watching her like she was a problem he'd already solved and filed away. Elara's chest ached. Not from the ropes, though they were cutting into her wrists now, warm blood trickling down her palms. The ache came from somewhere deeper, from the place where she'd kept every shared secret, every whispered promise, every moment she'd believed she mattered to him. The penalty for deceit of this nature, Garrett went on, clearly enjoying himself now, is permanent exile from Ashenmoor territory. However, he paused for effect, letting the word hang in the smoky air. Given your previous association with Second Hail, and in consideration of your years of service to this pack, the Council has agreed to offer you a choice. Her pulse spiked. A choice. In Ashenmoor, choices were traps dressed up as mercy. They gave you options so that when you fell, you couldn't say you weren't given a chance. You may accept exile and leave Ashenmoor territory by dawn, Garrett said, forfeiting all ties, all protections, and all rights to return. You will be declared rogue, and any pack member who encounters you beyond our borders will be within their rights to challenge or kill you without consequence. Someone in the crowd whispered, "She won't last a week out there." Another voice, 3 days maybe. Or, Garrett continued, raising his voice slightly, you may submit to a trial by shift. The murmuring stopped. The hall went quiet in that particular way that meant everyone was paying attention now, leaning in, hungry for blood. Trial by shift. Elara knew what that meant. Everyone did. It was the oldest, cruelest test Ashenmoor had, a relic from the days when the pack was smaller, more brutal, more desperate. You were forced to transform in front of the entire assembly, and they judged the strength and quality of your wolf. If you shifted into something strong, something rare, you might earn back your place. If your wolf was weak, common, unremarkable, you were deemed unworthy of the pack's protection. And if you couldn't shift at all, if your wolf refused or if you were broken somehow, you were worse than worthless. You were defective. And defective wolves didn't last long in the wild. Not with hunters and rogues and rival packs circling the territories like vultures. Elara's wolf stirred beneath her ribs, restless and angry. It had been quiet for weeks, too quiet, retreating somewhere deep inside where she couldn't always reach it, but now it pushed against her skin like it wanted out, like it knew what was coming, like it was ready to fight. "I'll take the trial," Elara said. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. Garrett's eyebrows lifted, genuine surprise flickering across his face. "You're certain? You understand that failure means immediate exile, with no appeal, no second chance?" "I understand." "And you choose this voluntarily?" "Yes." A few people in the crowd exchanged glances. Someone whispered, "Brave or stupid?" "Stupid," came the answer. Dorian's jaw tightened. For half a second, maybe less, something flickered in his expression. Regret, maybe. Or doubt. But it vanished before she could name it, buried under whatever calculation was running behind those gray eyes. "Very well," Garrett said. He gestured to two enforcers standing near the back of the hall. Both large men, both with the dead-eyed look of people who followed orders and didn't ask questions. "Bind her to the post." The enforcers moved fast. They grabbed Elara by the arms, rough hands digging into her biceps, and dragged her toward the center of the hall, her feet scraped against the stone, boots losing purchase. She didn't fight. There was no point. Fighting now would only make it worse. In the middle of the hall stood a thick wooden post, easily a foot in diameter, embedded deep in the stone floor. It was scorched black in places, stained dark in others. Old blood, old burns, old pain. She didn't want to think about how many people had been tied to it before her, how many had walked away, how many hadn't. The enforcers looped her bound wrists over an iron hook mounted at the top of the post, forcing her onto her toes. The rope bit deeper into her skin. Her shoulders screamed. The position was designed to hurt, to make you desperate, to push you toward the shift whether you were ready or not. The crowd pressed closer, forming a tighter ring. The torchlight made their shadows dance on the walls, huge and distorted. She could smell their anticipation, sharp and hungry, like wolves surrounding a wounded deer. "Shift," Garrett commanded. His voice echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Elara closed her eyes. She reached inward, past the fear and the humiliation and the heartbreak, down to the place where her wolf lived. It was there, coiled and seething in the dark, but it didn't answer her call. It just growled low in her chest, stubborn and wild and furious. "Come on," she thought desperately. "Please, don't do this to me. Not now. Not in front of them." "Shift," Garrett said again, louder this time. impatient. She tried. She pulled harder, dragging at the connection between human and wolf, but it resisted like trying to haul a rope with no grip. Her wolf thrashed against her, not helping, just fighting. Like it didn't trust her anymore. Like it blamed her for being here, for letting Dorian get close, for believing his lies. Sweat dripped down her back. Her breathing turned shallow and ragged. The position made it hard to pull in air. Her vision started to blur at the edges. The crowd started murmuring again, low, ugly sounds that built on each other. She can't do it. Broken wolf, I told you. Look at her. She's nothing special. Dorian dodged a bullet with this one. That last comment hit worse than the ropes. Worse than the hunger. Worse than anything. Dorian stood. The crowd went silent. He walked toward her, slow and deliberate, boots echoing on stone. Each step seemed to take forever. When he stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the faint stubble on his jaw, she could smell him. Leather and cedar wood and something she used to associate with safety, with home. Now it just made her sick. "You're stalling," he said quietly. His voice was flat, empty of everything it used to hold. She looked up at him, fighting to keep her breathing steady, searching his face for any trace of the man she'd loved. "Dorian, please, you know me. You know I didn't—" "I know what you are," he interrupted. His gray eyes were hard as flint. "And I know what you're not." Her breath hitched. He leaned closer, just enough that only she could hear, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow cut deeper than shouting ever could. "You were convenient, Elara, that's all. I needed someone to make me look stable, someone soft enough to trust me, someone who'd make the council see me as settled, mature, ready for leadership. You fit the role perfectly." He paused, letting the words sink in like poison. "But I'm moving up now. The Alpha Council is considering me for territorial command. And you?" He smiled, and it was the cruelest thing she'd ever seen. "You're dead weight, a liability I can't afford." The words hit like a physical blow, like he'd reached into her chest and torn something vital out. She stared at him, lips parted, unable to form words, unable to process that this was real, that this was happening. He stepped back, raising his voice so the whole hall could hear. "If she can't shift, she's useless to this pack. Exile her. Tonight." The crowd erupted in agreement. Voices overlapped, some shouting, some laughing, some just murmuring approval. Garrett nodded, a satisfied smile tugging at his thin lips, and moved toward the post to release her bonds. But then Elara's wolf snarled. It wasn't a sound. Not yet. It was a feeling. A violent, bone-deep vibration that shot through her entire body like lightning. Her vision blurred. Her skin went hot, then cold, then burning. The ropes around her wrists snapped like thread, the iron fibers glowing red for a split second before they disintegrated. She fell forward onto her hands and knees, hitting the stone hard enough to bruise. The shift tore through her. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't controlled. It wasn't like the shifts she'd practiced in training, gentle and measured. This was violent, primal. Her bones cracked and reformed with sounds like breaking branches. Her muscles stretched and bulged, ripping through her clothes, her teeth elongated into fangs that filled her mouth. Her spine extended, vertebrae popping into place one by one. Pain ripped through every nerve, white-hot and all-consuming, but she didn't scream. She couldn't. Her throat had already changed, her vocal cords reshaping into something that could only produce growls and howls. Her vision shifted, colors bleeding away, replaced by sharper contrasts, better motion detection. Her hearing exploded, picking up every heartbeat in the room, every breath, every whispered curse. When it was over, she stood on 4 legs. The hall went dead silent. Elara's wolf was massive, larger than any wolf the Ashenmore pack had seen in a generation, maybe 2. She stood nearly 4 feet at the shoulder, built like a hunter from the old stories, all lean muscle and lethal grace. Her fur was midnight black, sleek and gleaming in the torchlight like polished obsidian, with a silver streak running from her muzzle all the way down her spine to the tip of her tail. The silver caught the light, almost glowing. Her eyes, still carrying her consciousness, burned molten gold. She was rare, ancient bloodline rare. The kind of wolf that showed up in pack legends and territorial histories. The kind that marked families as having descended from the first packs, before the territories fractured, before the wars. The kind that hadn't walked Ashenmore territory in over a century, and everyone in that hall knew it. Garrett stumbled backward, his face draining of color. The enforcers froze mid-step, hands dropping from their weapons. The crowd pressed against the walls like they were trying to melt into the stone, eyes wide, mouths hanging open. Even the torches seemed to flicker lower, as if the flames themselves were bowing. Dorian stared at her, and for the first time since this nightmare started, he looked genuinely shaken. His carefully constructed mask cracked. His jaw went slack. His hand moved unconsciously toward the knife at his belt, a defensive gesture he probably wasn't even aware of making. Elara's wolf growled, low and rumbling, and the sound filled the hall like thunder rolling through a canyon. It vibrated in the stone, in the bones of everyone present, primal, ancient, a sound that demanded submission. She took one step forward, then another. Her claws scraped against the stone, leaving thin scratches in rock that had stood for 200 years. The crowd flinched back as one. Dorian's hand tightened on his knife hilt, and then the doors to the hall exploded inward. The crash was deafening. Wood splintered and flew across the floor in a spray of debris. The heavy iron hinges tore free from the stone frame with a shriek of metal. The torches flickered violently, several going out entirely. Every head whipped toward the entrance. A man stepped through the shattered doorway, boots crunching on broken wood. He was tall, easily 6.5 feet, with broad shoulders and a presence that made the air feel heavier, thicker, harder to breathe. His hair was dark, almost black, with faint silver streaks at the temples that caught the torchlight. His eyes were the color of a storm about to break, gray-blue and intense, the kind of eyes that saw everything and forgot nothing. His face was hard angles and old scars, including a thin white line that ran from his left temple to his jaw. He wore no armor, no ceremonial robes, nothing to mark his rank or station, just dark leather, worn and practical, and a heavy coat that fell to his knees. He didn't need decorations. Everyone in that hall knew who he was. King Cale Draven, ruler of the Northern Territories, the man who'd unified 6 fractured pacts under one banner through a combination of strategic brilliance and brutal efficiency. The man who'd crushed 3 coups, executed 2 traitors in his own council, and personally killed the last alpha who'd challenged his rule. The man who controlled more territory than any single leader in the past 5 generations. He walked into the hall like he owned it, like he owned the building, the pack, the air itself. His gaze swept the room slowly, taking in the crowd pressed against the walls, the council frozen in place, the shattered post, the scattered ropes. And then it landed on Elara. He stopped. The entire hall held its breath. Cale's expression didn't change. His face remained carved from stone, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or surprise. Or something else entirely, something harder to name. He stared at her wolf, his gaze traveling from her golden eyes to the silver streak in her fur, and then he tilted his head slightly. And then he smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It wasn't reassuring. It was the smile of a man who'd just found something valuable lying in the dirt, something everyone else had been too stupid to recognize. "Well," he said, his voice low and rough, carrying effortlessly across the silent hall despite not being loud. "This just got interesting." Garrett recovered first, probably because he was a politician, and politicians learn to recover fast. He stepped forward, hands raised in a placating gesture. "Your Majesty, this is an internal pack matter, a disciplinary proceeding. We weren't expecting—" "I don't care what you were expecting," Cale interrupted, not looking at him. His eyes stayed locked on Elara. "And it's not an internal matter anymore. Your Majesty, with respect, we have jurisdiction over—" "You had jurisdiction." Cale finally turned to look at Garrett, and the councilman actually took a step back. "Not anymore." "I don't understand." "She's mine," Cale said simply, like he was stating an obvious fact, like he was commenting on the weather. The words hit the room like a bomb. Silence. Complete and absolute. The kind where you could hear individual heartbeats. Then everyone started talking at once. Dorian moved first. He pushed through the crowd, hand still on his knife, jaw set in that stubborn way he got when he'd decided something. "You can't just— That's not how this works. She's Ashenmore. She's under our authority. You have no claim." Cale's head turned, slowly, deliberately. His gaze pinned Dorian in place like a blade through the chest, and Dorian's voice died in his throat. "You must be the idiot who tried to throw her away," Kyle said. His tone was casual, almost conversational, but there was something underneath it, something cold and sharp and dangerous. "Tell me something. Do you make a habit of discarding things you don't understand, or are you just that spectacularly stupid?" Dorian's face flushed red. "She lied. She falsified her bloodline records. She didn't falsify anything," Kyle said, cutting him off. His voice dropped, going from conversational to deadly in half a second. "Her bloodline is real. I can smell it from here. Silver-marked black wolves only come from 3 families, and 2 of them died out 60 years ago, which means she's descended from the Vance line, the actual Vance line, the one that held territory before your pack even existed." He paused, letting that sink in, which means either you're blind, you're incompetent, or you're a coward trying to climb over someone stronger than you because you know you'll never measure up on your own. The crowd murmured, shuffling uncomfortably. A few people looked at Dorian with new suspicion. Dorian's jaw clenched so hard it looked like it might crack. "I was following protocol. The records, Kyle said, were filed by a widow trying to protect her daughter in a pack that clearly doesn't appreciate what it has." He took a step closer to Dorian, and despite being only a few inches taller, he somehow seemed to loom. "I suggest you sit down before I decide you're not worth the breath it takes to insult you." Dorian hesitated. His hand was still on his knife. For a moment, it looked like he might actually be stupid enough to try something. Then his survival instincts kicked in, and he sat down. Hard. Kyle turned back to Elara. He approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. When he was a few feet away, he crouched low, bringing himself to eye level with her wolf. Up close, she could see the details: the scars on his hands, the faint silver streaks in his dark hair, the weight in his gaze that came from seeing too much and carrying too much for too long. He smelled like rain and wood smoke and iron. "You've had a rough night," he said quietly, just to her. "Probably a rough few days if I'm reading this situation correctly, so I'm going to make this simple." He paused, making sure she was listening. "You can stay here, with these people who fear you and the man who betrayed you. You can let them judge you and diminish you and waste whatever potential you have. Or," his eyes held hers, "you can come with me. Walk out of here right now. No more councils, no more trials. No more proving yourself to people who'll never appreciate what you are." Elara's wolf stared at him, unblinking. Her mind raced. This was insane. She didn't know this man, didn't know what he wanted or why he was here or what "come with me" actually meant. He could be lying, could be manipulating her, could be worse than Dorian ever was. But then again, what did she have to lose? Dorian had already taken everything. Kale waited, patient, not pushing, just offering. And slowly, deliberately, Elara shifted back. The transformation was smoother this time, more controlled. Her bones reshaped with less pain, her fur receded like water flowing backward. And within seconds, she was kneeling on the stone floor, human again. Naked, shaking. Her silver-streaked black hair falling around her shoulders in tangled waves. Her skin covered in sweat and the faint remnants of blood from the ropes. Someone in the crowd moved to cover her. An older woman with a kind face, starting to shrug off her shawl. Kyle held up one hand. "Don't." The woman froze. Kyle shrugged off his coat, heavy black leather, lined with fur, still warm from his body heat, and draped it over Elara's shoulders. It was huge on her, falling past her knees, but it was warm. It smelled like rain and wood smoke and safety. Elara pulled it tight around herself, her hands shaking as she gripped the edges. She looked up at him, at the stranger who'd just blown apart her entire world for the second time in one night. "Who are you?" she whispered. Her voice came out hoarse, raw from the shift. His mouth quirked in something that might have been a smile. "Someone who doesn't waste potential." He stood, offering her his hand. "Now get up. We're leaving." She stared at his hand for a long moment, calloused, scarred, strong. She took it. His grip was firm but careful as he pulled her to her feet. She swayed, unsteady, shifting twice in one night, after weeks of her wolf being dormant had taken more out of her than she'd realized, but his hand stayed on her elbow, keeping her upright. Dorian shot to his feet. "You can't take her. The council hasn't rendered a verdict. We have laws, procedures." "The council," Kyle said without turning around, his voice carrying that casual finality again, has no authority over what belongs to me, and she does, as of now. Garrett opened his mouth, then closed it. His face went through several complicated expressions: anger, frustration, fear, before settling on resignation. He was a politician. He knew when to fold. "Anyone else want to object?" Kyle asked the room. Silence. 300 people, and not one voice. "Good," Kyle said. "Then we're done here." He started toward the shattered doors, Elara at his side, his hand still steadying her elbow. The crowd parted like water around a stone, pressing themselves against the walls to get out of his path. No one met his eyes. No one dared. As they passed Dorian, Elara stopped. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man she'd loved crumbling under the weight of his own ambition. He looked smaller now, diminished, like she was seeing him clearly for the first time, without the filter of her own hope and trust. He'd thrown her away to climb higher, and it hadn't even worked. "You were right about one thing," she said quietly, her voice steady despite everything. "I'm not what you thought I was." She turned away and walked out of Ashenmoor for the last time. Outside, the night air was cold and sharp, clearing some of the smoke and pain from her head. The moon hung heavy and full above the trees. Kyle's people were waiting, a dozen warriors, all mounted, all armed, all watching the hall with the alert stillness of trained soldiers. Kale led her to a horse, a massive black stallion that snorted when they approached. "Can you ride?" "Yes," she managed. "Good." He lifted her onto the saddle like she weighed nothing, then swung up behind her. His arms came around her to take the reins, caging her in warmth and leather and that scent of rain and iron. "Where are we going?" she asked as the group began to move, horses turning toward the forest road that led north. "Somewhere you'll never be wasted again," Kyle said. And they rode into the darkness, leaving Ashenmoor and everything it had taken from her behind. The ride north lasted 3 days. Elara had expected questions. Interrogation, maybe. Some explanation of what she'd just agreed to by taking Kale's hand and leaving everything behind. But Kale didn't explain anything. He rode in silence, his warriors fanned out around them in a loose formation, and when they stopped to rest, he posted guards and told her to sleep. She didn't sleep much. Her mind wouldn't stop circling back to the ceremonial hall, to Dorian's face, to the moment her wolf had exploded out of her like it had been caged too long, to the look in Kyle's eyes when he'd seen her. Recognition. He'd recognized something about her that she didn't understand yet. On the third morning, they crested a ridge and she saw it, Kyle's stronghold. It wasn't a city, not exactly. More like a fortress that had grown into a settlement. Stone walls 30 feet high surrounded a sprawling compound of buildings, training yards, and what looked like barracks. Beyond the walls, smaller structures dotted the landscape. Homes, maybe, or workshops. Smoke rose from dozens of chimneys. The place hummed with activity even from a distance. "Welcome to Ironhold," Kyle said. It was the first thing he'd said to her in hours. They rode through the main gates, and Elara felt the weight of every stare. People stopped what they were doing to watch them pass. Blacksmiths at their forges, warriors sparring in the yards, women carrying water from the wells, children playing in the dirt. All of them stopped and stared. At her. She pulled Kyle's coat tighter around herself. She was still wearing it, had been wearing it for 3 days straight, sleeping in it, riding in it. Underneath, she had on borrowed clothes from one of Kyle's warriors, a woman named Mira, who'd taken pity on her that first night. The clothes didn't fit right. Nothing fit right. "They're not used to visitors," Kyle said, swinging down from the horse. He offered her his hand again. "They're not staring because I'm a visitor," Elara said, but she took his hand anyway. Her legs were stiff from days of riding. "No," Kyle agreed. "They're staring because you smell like old bloodline and you came in wearing my coat. That's basically a declaration." "A declaration of what?" He didn't answer, just led her through the compound toward the largest building, a massive stone structure with a flat roof and narrow windows. Guards flanked the entrance, both of them armed with short swords and crossbows. They nodded at Kyle and didn't spare Elara a second glance. Inside, the building opened into a great hall similar to Ashenmoor's but larger, more utilitarian. Less ceremony, more function. A long table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs. Maps covered one wall, marked with colored pins and chalk lines. Weapons hung on another, swords, axes, spears, all practical and well-maintained. 3 people were waiting at the table. 2 men and a woman, all of them older than Kael, all of them carrying themselves with the kind of confidence that came from years of survival. The woman spoke first. She was in her 50s, maybe, with iron gray hair pulled back in a braid and a scar that ran from her collarbone to her jaw. "You brought a stray?"
"Lyssa," Kael said calmly, "meet Elara Vance. Elara, this is my council. Lyssa handles the warriors. Marcus," he gestured to a broad-shouldered man with a salt and pepper beard, "manages supply lines. And Torin," the third man, lean and sharp-eyed, nodded slightly, "handles intelligence and territory disputes." "Vance," Torin repeated, his eyes narrowing. "As in the old territory Vance? The northern families?" "Yes," Kael said.
"Those lines died out," Marcus said flatly. "Everyone knows that." "Apparently not everyone," Kael replied. He pulled out a chair for Elara. "Sit." She sat, feeling their eyes on her like physical pressure, judging, assessing, deciding if she was worth their time. "I don't understand why she's here," Lyssa said bluntly. "We have enough mouths to feed without taking in refugees from failed pacts."
"She's not a refugee," Kael said. He remained standing, one hand resting on the back of Elara's chair. "She's an asset." "Based on what?" Lyssa pressed. "You saw her shift once and decided she was worth the political headache of stealing her from Ashenmore?" "I didn't steal her. They were throwing her away." "That doesn't answer my question."
Kael's jaw tightened.
"She's silver-marked. Do you know how rare that is? There are maybe 5 silver-marked wolves left in all the territories, and most of them are too old to fight. She's young, strong, and they had her tied to a post like she was worthless." "Maybe she is," Torin said quietly. His voice was softer than Lyssa's, but somehow more cutting. "Maybe there's a reason they were getting rid of her. Bad judgment, weak character, instability."
"Or," Kael said, his voice dropping into that dangerous register Elara was starting to recognize, "maybe they're idiots who couldn't see potential if it bit them." "You're taking a risk," Marcus said. "Ashenmore won't forget this. They'll call it theft, violation of territory rights." "Let them call it whatever they want." "Kael, I'm not debating this," Kael cut in. "She stays. The question is what we do with her." Lyssa leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "If she stays, she has to prove she's worth the resources. No free rides, no special treatment because she caught your eye." "I don't want special treatment," Elara said. Her voice came out steady despite the knot in her stomach. All 3 council members looked at her like they'd forgotten she could speak. "Then what do you want?" Torin asked. "Good question. What did she want?" 3 days ago, she'd wanted Dorian to love her, wanted Ashenmore to accept her, wanted a life that turned out to be built on lies. Now? "I want to be useful," she said finally. "I want to matter." Lyssa snorted. "Cute sentiment. Doesn't tell us what you can actually do." "I can fight," Elara said. "I've trained with Ashenmore's combat units for 6 years. I know tracking, patrol tactics, basic field medicine. I can hunt. Can you kill?" Lyssa interrupted. The question hung in the air. Elara thought about it. Really thought about it. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've never had to." "Then you're useless in a real fight," Lyssa said flatly. "Combat training means nothing if you hesitate when it matters." "She'll learn," Kael said. "Will she? Or will she freeze the first time someone comes at her for real and get herself or someone else killed? That's what training is for." "We don't have time to babysit." "Enough," Kael said. Not loud, but with enough weight that Lyssa stopped mid-sentence. "She'll train with the new recruits. If she can't keep up, she's out. If she proves herself, she stays. Fair?" Lyssa studied him for a long moment, then shrugged. "Your funeral. But when this blows up in your face, don't say I didn't warn you." "Noted," Kael said dryly. He looked down at Elara. "Training starts at dawn. Get some rest." He led her out of the hall and through a series of corridors to a small room on the 2nd floor. It was sparse, a bed, a trunk, a narrow window, but it was clean and private. "This is yours," Kael said. "Locks on the inside. No one comes in without your permission." "Thank you,"
Elara said. She hesitated. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Helping me. You don't know me. I could be everything they said, a liar, a liability, worthless.
Kale looked at her for a long moment. You know what I saw when I walked into that hall? He asked quietly. I saw a woman who'd been betrayed by someone she trusted, humiliated in front of her entire pack, and tied up like an animal. And when they gave her a choice between running and fighting, she chose to fight. He paused. That's not worthless. That's rare. He turned to leave. Kael, she called after him. He stopped in the doorway. What do you get out of this? He glanced back at her, and for the first time she saw something almost like amusement in his eyes. Maybe I'm just tired of watching people waste what they have, he said. Get some sleep, Elara. Tomorrow's going to be hard. He wasn't wrong. Dawn came too early. Someone pounded on her door before the sun was fully up, shouting that she had 5 minutes to get to the training yard. She dressed in the borrowed clothes, they'd left her new ones at least, plain but functional, and ran. The training yard was a flat expanse of packed dirt, surrounded by a low stone wall. Weapon racks lined one side. Wooden practice dummies stood in rows on the other, and in the center, waiting with their arms crossed, were 15 young men and women who looked like they'd been born holding weapons. Lyssa stood at the front of the group, looking even less friendly than she had the night before. You're late, she said when Elara skidded to a stop. Elara glanced at the sky. The sun wasn't even visible yet. It's barely dawn. Dawn means dawn, not 5 minutes after. Drop and give me 20. What? Push-ups. Now. Elara dropped. Her arms were still sore from the ropes, from the shifts, from 3 days on horseback. The push-ups burned. She made it to 15 before her arms started shaking. Pathetic, one of the recruits muttered. Elara gritted her teeth and finished the set. Up, Lyssa commanded. Everyone, circle formation. The recruits moved instantly, forming a ring around the practice area. Elara scrambled to join them, standing between a tall boy with a shaved head and a girl with a crooked nose that looked like it had been broken and badly set. New rule, Lyssa announced, walking along the inside of the circle. We have a special recruit joining us, Elara Vance, who came here wearing the king's coat and claiming she can fight. She stopped in front of Elara. So let's see if that's true. She pointed at the boy with the shaved head. In the ring, you too, Vance. Elara's stomach dropped. Now? You have a problem with now? I need to warm up, get oriented. You think enemies wait for you to warm up? Lyssa's voice was sharp. You think they'll give you time to get oriented before they rip your throat out. In the ring, both of you. The boy stepped forward. He was bigger than Elara by at least 50 pounds, all of it muscle. He looked eager. Elara moved to the center of the ring. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Hand to hand, Lyssa said. First blood or submission, no wolf forms. Begin. The boy didn't wait. He came at her fast, throwing a right hook that would have taken her head off if she hadn't ducked. She'd trained for this. 6 years with Ashen Moore's combat units. She knew the theory, but theory didn't prepare her for how fast he was. His knee came up, catching her in the ribs. Air exploded from her lungs. She stumbled back, and he pressed the advantage, driving her toward the edge of the ring. She tried to counter, throwing a jab that he batted away like it was nothing. He swept her legs out from under her. She hit the ground hard, dust puffing up around her. Before she could move, he was on top of her, forearm across her throat, pressing down. Yield, he said. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her vision started to tunnel. Yield, he repeated. She tapped his arm twice. He let go immediately and stood, offering her a hand. She didn't take it, just rolled to her side, coughing and gasping. 10 seconds, Lyssa said flatly. That's how long you lasted. Laughter rippled through the circle. Not cruel exactly, but not kind either. The laughter of people who'd just watched someone fail and felt relieved it wasn't them. Elara pushed herself to her feet. Her ribs ached. Her throat felt bruised. Again, Lyssa said. What? You heard me. Again. Same opponent. Did I stutter? The boy, whose name she still didn't know, looked almost apologetic as he moved back to the center. Elara joined him, her legs unsteady. Begin. This time she lasted 20 seconds. The third time, 30. By the fifth match, she couldn't feel her ribs anymore. Everything was just one continuous ache. She couldn't win. He was bigger, stronger, better trained. But she stopped yielding, started making him work for it, started seeing openings, even if she was too slow to exploit them. After the seventh round, Lyssa finally called a halt. "Enough," she said. "Formation run, 5 miles. Vance, you're in front." They ran. Through the compound, out the gates, into the forest on a narrow trail that twisted between trees and over roots designed to trip you. Elara's lungs burned. Her legs felt like lead. Behind her, she could hear the other recruits breathing hard but keeping pace. She stumbled twice, got up both times. When they finally got back to the compound, she collapsed in the training yard and threw up. No one helped her. They just filed past, heading for the water barrels. "Tomorrow," Lyssa said, standing over her, "you'll do better, or you'll be gone." That became the pattern. Every morning, she got beaten. Every afternoon, she ran until she couldn't stand. Every evening, she collapsed in her room and tried not to cry from exhaustion and pain. The other recruits didn't talk to her, didn't include her. She was the outsider, the charity case, the one who'd come in wearing the king's coat like she was special. They resented her. She could smell it. A week in, one of them, a stocky girl named Rhea with short red hair, cornered her after training. "You don't belong here," Rhea said. Her voice was conversational, but her eyes were hard. "You're slow, weak. The only reason you're still here is because the king wants to screw you. That's not... Everyone knows it. You think we're blind? He gave you his coat, put you in private quarters. You're a distraction, and distractions get people killed. I'm trying to learn. Try harder, or get out." Elara wanted to argue, wanted to defend herself, but she was too tired, and Rhea wasn't exactly wrong. She was slow. She was weak compared to the rest of them. That night, lying in her bed with every muscle screaming, she seriously considered leaving. Just walking out the gates and disappearing into the territories. Becoming a rogue. At least then she'd only be responsible for herself. But then she thought about Dorian's face when he'd called her dead weight. She thought about the council in Ashenmoor ready to throw her away. She thought about Kael asking her what she wanted. "I want to matter." She got up the next morning. 2 weeks in, something shifted. She started anticipating moves before they landed, started seeing patterns in how people fought. Her body stopped feeling like it was actively trying to kill her and started responding the way it was supposed to. She still lost most of her matches, but she started lasting longer. 3 weeks in, she won her first fight. It was against a younger recruit, a boy who relied too much on strength and not enough on strategy. She let him overextend on a punch, stepped inside his guard, and swept his legs. He went down hard. She followed through, got him in a hold, and he tapped out. The yard went silent. Then Lyssa actually smiled. Just a little. Just for a second. "Better," was all she said. That night, Rhea approached her again. Elara braced for another confrontation. Instead, Rhea handed her a wrapped piece of bread and dried meat. "You missed dinner," Rhea said gruffly. "Thought you might be hungry." Elara stared at the food, then at Rhea. "Don't make it weird," Rhea muttered and walked away. Small victories. But then, on the first day of her 4th week, everything went wrong. They were running patrol drills in the forest, standard exercises, 2-person teams, rotating positions. Elara was paired with a quiet boy named Finn, who never spoke unless directly addressed. They were sweeping the eastern section when they heard it. Snarling, growling, the sounds of a fight. Finn froze. "We should get Lyssa." "No time," Elara said. The sounds were close. Whatever was happening now. They ran toward it. They found 2 rogues, massive, scarred wolves with wild eyes and foam at their mouths, attacking a girl from the compound. She couldn't have been more than 13, small and terrified, backed against a tree with one arm hanging at a wrong angle. The rogues were playing with her, taking turns lunging, snapping, pulling back, enjoying her fear. "Shift," Elara told Finn. "We're not supposed to engage without shift. Now." She didn't wait for him. She let her wolf out, easier now, faster, the connection between human and animal strengthening with each passing day, and launched herself at the nearest rogue. She hit it from the side, fangs finding purchase in its shoulder. It yelped and rounded on her, and suddenly she was in a real fight, not a training exercise, not a controlled match, real. The rogue was stronger, meaner. It knew how to kill. It went for her throat, for her belly, for all the vulnerable places. She dodged, twisted, felt teeth graze her flank. Pain, hot and immediate. Behind her, she heard Finn shift, heard him engage the second rogue. Elara's opponent got her pinned, jaws snapping inches from her face. She could smell its breath, rot and blood and madness. Her wolf snarled, bucked, couldn't break free. This was it. This was how she died. Then a massive black wolf, bigger than both rogues combined, appeared out of nowhere and closed its jaws around the rogue's neck. Kael. He shook the rogue like a toy, snapped its spine with a sound like breaking wood, and dropped the corpse. Then he turned to the second rogue, which had already released Finn and was trying to run. It didn't make it 10 feet. Kael caught it, killed it, and shifted back to human in one fluid motion.
"What?" he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Do you think you're doing?" Elara shifted back, gasping. Blood ran down her side where the rogue had caught her. "There was a girl. She needed help. You're a trainee. You don't engage rogues without backup. We were the backup. You could have been killed, but I wasn't."
By sheer luck, his voice rose, anger bleeding through the control. "You have 4 weeks of training. 4. These rogues had probably been killing for years. You're not ready for this." "Then when will I be?" she snapped back, her own anger rising to match his. "How many more weeks of getting beaten do I need before I'm allowed to actually use what I've learned? That girl would have died, and that would have been tragic, but throwing your life away wouldn't have changed it."
"I didn't throw my life away. I won. You got lucky. Maybe luck is part of fighting." They stared at each other, both breathing hard. Finn had shifted back and was tending to the injured girl, pointedly not looking at them. The dead rogues lay in spreading pools of blood. "You could have died," Kael said again, quieter now. "But I didn't."
He looked at her for a long moment, something complicated moving behind his eyes. Then he turned to Finn. "Get the girl to the healers. Report to Lyssa. Tell her what happened." "Yes, sir." Finn scooped up the girl, who was crying now, shock setting in, and ran. Kael looked back at Elara. "You're bleeding." "It's not bad. Let me see." He moved closer, and she tensed, but he just examined the wound on her side. His fingers were surprisingly gentle as they probed the torn skin. She hissed when he touched a particularly deep part. "Needs stitches," he said. "Come on." He led her back to the compound, not speaking, tension radiating off him in waves. When they reached the healing hall, a long building that smelled like herbs and antiseptic, he sat her down on a bench and gathered supplies. "You know how to do this?" she asked. "I've stitched up plenty of warriors." He threaded a curved needle. "This will hurt." "I know." It did hurt. Each pull of the thread sent fire through her side. But she didn't make a sound, just gritted her teeth and stared at the wall. When he finished, he tied off the thread and sat back. "Elara." She looked at him. "You did well today," he said quietly. "You saved that girl's life. Your instincts were right." He paused. "But you scared me." The admission hung between them. "I'm not trying to scare you," she said. "I know. That's what makes it worse." He stood, gathering the bloody supplies. "You're reckless. You're brave, but you're reckless. And reckless people don't survive long in the territories." "Then teach me to be smart and brave." He looked down at her, and something in his expression softened. "I'm trying," he said. "But you have to meet me halfway. You have to trust that the training has a purpose." "I do trust you." "Do you? Did she?" She'd known him for less than a month. He'd saved her, yes, given her a chance. But she didn't really know him, didn't know what he wanted from her, or why he'd risked political fallout to take her from Ashenmore. "I'm trying to," she said honestly. He nodded slowly. "That's fair." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Get some rest. Tomorrow you're training with me." Her head snapped up. "What? You want to be smart and brave? I'll show you how. Be in the yard at dawn. Don't be late." He left before she could respond. The next morning, she was early. The yard was empty when Elara arrived, the sky still gray with pre-dawn light. Her side ached where Kael had stitched it, each breath pulling at the wound. She'd wrapped it tight and tried not to think about how much worse it could have been. She stretched, testing her range of motion when she heard footsteps behind her. Kale walked into the yard carrying 2 wooden practice swords. He tossed one to her without warning. She caught it, barely. "Good reflexes," he said. "You'll need them." He didn't give her time to prepare, just came at her, his wooden blade swinging in a controlled arc toward her ribs. She blocked, but the impact rattled through her arms. He pressed forward, striking high then low, forcing her to move, to think, to react faster than her training had ever demanded. She lasted maybe 30 seconds before he disarmed her. The practice sword clattered across the dirt. "Again," he said. She retrieved it. They went again. This time she lasted 40 seconds. "You're thinking too much," Kyle said, circling her. "Fighting isn't a math problem. You can't calculate every move." "Then what is it?" "Instinct. Reading your opponent. Feeling where they're going before they get there." He struck without warning. She blocked, but barely. "Your body knows what to do. You just have to let it." "That's not helpful advice." "Then stop thinking about advice and just move." They trained for 2 hours. By the end, Elara's arms felt like rubber, and sweat soaked through her shirt despite the morning cold. But something had shifted. She was starting to see it. The rhythm of combat, the give and take, the way Kyle telegraphed his moves just enough for her to counter if she paid attention. When he finally called a halt, she collapsed on the ground, chest heaving. Kyle sat beside her, barely winded. "Better? I still lost every round." "You stayed on your feet. That's progress." He glanced at her. "How's the wound?" "Fine." Liar. But he didn't push it. They sat in silence as the sun finally broke over the walls, painting everything gold. "Why did you really take me from Ashenmoor?" Elara asked quietly. Kale was quiet for a long moment. "You want the tactical answer or the truth?" "Both." "Tactically? You're rare. Silver-marked wolves can do things others can't. Track better, fight harder, lead. Having you here strengthens my position." He paused. "The truth? I saw someone being thrown away for being inconvenient. I've seen it too many times. Good people destroyed because they didn't fit someone else's plan. I was tired of watching it happen." "That's it? You saved me because you were tired?" "I saved you because you deserved better than what they were giving you." He stood, offering her his hand. "Now come on, council meeting in an hour. You're required to attend." "Why?" "Because this concerns you." The council chamber was tense when they arrived. Lyssa, Marcus, and Torin were already seated, and none of them looked happy. 2 additional people Elara didn't recognize stood near the map wall, a man and woman, both wearing the formal traveling clothes that marked them as messengers. "Ashenmoor sent envoys," Lyssa said without preamble. "They want her back." Elara's stomach dropped. Kyle's expression didn't change. He moved to the head of the table, and Elara took a seat near the back, trying to make herself small. "On what grounds?" Kyle asked. The male envoy stepped forward. He was middle-aged, with tired eyes and the careful posture of someone trying not to offend. "Lord Dorian Hale formally requests the return of Elara Vance to face charges of desertion and theft of pack resources. He's prepared to Theft?" Kale's voice was dangerously quiet. "She left with nothing but what I gave her. The knowledge she possesses of Ashenmoor's defenses, patrol routes, and internal structure is considered pack property," the envoy said carefully. "Lord Hale argues that her presence here constitutes a security breach." "Lord Hale," Kyle said, emphasizing the title with obvious disdain, "can argue whatever he likes. She's not going back. With respect, Your Majesty, this creates a difficult situation. Ashenmoor is within their rights to demand restitution for—" "I don't care about their rights." The room went silent. "Kyle," Marcus said carefully, "we need to think about this strategically. Ashenmoor has trade agreements with 3 territories under our protection. If they pull those agreements, let them. We can't afford a trade war right now. Winter's coming. Our grain stores are lower than I'd like. If Ashenmoor cuts off their supply lines and convinces their allies to do the same, then we'll find other sources." "It's not that simple," Torin interjected. "Ashenmoor has been looking for an excuse to challenge our authority in the Eastern Territories. This gives them one. They'll paint you as a territory raider, someone who steals from allied packs." That narrative spreads, and suddenly every smaller pack starts questioning whether they're safe under our protection. Kale's jaw tightened. So what are you suggesting? That I send her back? I'm suggesting, Torin said carefully, that we consider a compromise. Perhaps a formal hearing where both sides present their case. Let a neutral council decide. No. Kale's voice was flat, final. Your Majesty. The female envoy spoke for the first time, her voice sharp. Lord Hale was very clear. If you refuse to return her, Ashenmore will consider it an act of aggression. Let them consider it whatever they want. They have alliances, the Redwood Pack, Silverfin, Blackwater, none of whom will risk open conflict with me over this. Are you certain? Lisa asked quietly. She didn't sound challenging, just genuinely asking. Because I'm not. The Eastern Territories have been restless. They see you consolidating power, bringing in outsiders, making decisions without consultation. Some of them are scared. Scared people do stupid things. Kyle looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned to Elara. Step outside. She blinked. What? This is a council discussion. Step outside. Anger flared in her chest. This is about me. I should be here. And you'll be here for the decision. But right now we need to discuss options that you don't need to hear. His eyes held hers, not unkind but immovable. Outside. Please. She stood, her chair scraping against stone, and walked out. The door closed behind her with a heavy thud. She paced the corridor outside, fists clenched. Inside, she could hear raised voices but couldn't make out words. The argument went on for 20 minutes. 30. Finally, the door opened. Lissa emerged first, her face grim. She looked at Elara, opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then just shook her head and walked away. Marcus and Torin followed, both avoiding eye contact. The envoys came last, the woman's face tight with displeasure. We'll deliver your message, she said to someone still inside. Then to Elara, her voice cold. This isn't over. They left. Elara stepped back into the chamber. Kyle stood at the map wall, hands braced against the table, staring at colored pins like they held answers. What did you tell them? She asked. That you're staying, that any attempt to take you by force will be considered an act of war. He didn't look at her. And that if Dorian Hale wants to discuss this further, he can come here himself and we'll settle it the old way. The old way? Single combat. Winner takes all. Her breath caught. Kale, you can't. I already did. He finally turned to face her. Ashenmore won't back down quietly. You need to understand that. They'll push this. They'll make it a point of pride. And when they do, people will get hurt. Then send me back. The words hurt coming out, but she forced them anyway. If it prevents a war, no. I'm not worth a war. That's not your call to make. He moved closer, his presence filling the space between them. You think I don't know what this costs? You think I'm doing this lightly? I've spent 10 years building alliances, keeping peace, making sure these territories don't tear each other apart. I know what I'm risking. Then why? Because some things matter more than peace. His voice was rough. You matter more than peace. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning she wasn't ready to examine. You barely know me, she said quietly. I know enough. Before she could respond, rapid footsteps echoed down the corridor. A scout burst through the door, breathing hard. Your Majesty, we have a situation. Southern border, multiple breaches. Kyle's entire demeanor shifted, going from intense to tactical in a heartbeat. Details. Rogue pack. 20, maybe 30 strong. They hit one of the outer settlements an hour ago. Killed 6 people, took livestock. They're moving north. Our patrols? Already engaged, but they're outnumbered. Captain Riker is requesting reinforcements. Kale was already moving, grabbing his coat from the chair. Full mobilization. Every available warrior. Tell Lissa I want her unit on the South Road in 10 minutes. Yes, sir. The scout ran. Kale turned to Elara. Get to the armory. Get equipped. You're coming. I'm not ready yet. Neither are they. He headed for the door. War doesn't wait for ready. It just comes. The armory was chaos. Warriors grabbing weapons, strapping on leather armor, checking supplies. Elara found herself swept up in the current, someone pressing a short sword into her hands, another person handing her a bow and quiver.
You know how to use that? It was Rhea, already armed and looking like she'd been born for this. I've trained with bows. Training and using are different. Stay close to me. Don't do anything stupid. Rhea paused. And if it comes down to you or them, you pick you. Always. Understood? Elara nodded, throat tight. They assembled in the main yard. 60 warriors, all grim-faced, all checking their neighbor's gear. Kale stood at the front, Lyssa beside him. He didn't give a speech, just said, "Move out," and they did. They ran south in formation, the forest blurring past. Elara's side burned, the stitches pulling with every stride, but she pushed through it. Around her, warriors moved with practiced efficiency, communicating with hand signals, staying quiet. They smelled the smoke before they saw it. The settlement was burning. Small houses, maybe 8 or 10, with flames eating through thatched roofs and wooden walls. Bodies lay in the dirt. Elara saw a woman, an old man, a child. Her stomach turned, and in the center of the destruction, the rogues waited. They were massive, scarred, their fur matted with blood and filth. Some were in wolf form, others human, all armed. At their center stood the largest wolf Elara had ever seen, easily the size of Kael, with one milky white eye and fangs that looked too big for its mouth. Their leader. Kael shifted mid-stride, his transformation fluid and terrifying. His wolf was jet black, huge and powerful, radiating authority. He let out a howl that shook the trees. The rogues howled back. Then they charged. The two forces collided like a breaking wave. The sounds were immediate and horrific, snarling, screaming, the wet crunch of bone breaking. Elara shifted without thinking, her wolf bursting out in a rush of pain and fury. A rogue came at her from the left. She met it head-on, remembering Kael's training. Don't think. Move. Her jaws found its throat. Hot blood filled her mouth. The rogue went down, twitching. She'd killed it. No time to process. Another rogue, this one human with a crude spear. It jabbed at her. She dodged, felt the blade graze her shoulder. She lunged, her weight carrying them both to the ground. Her teeth found his arm. He screamed. Someone pulled her off. Rhea, in wolf form, eyes wild. Stay focused, she seemed to say. The battle was a blur of blood and violence. Elara lost track of time, of individual opponents. She just fought, her wolf acting on instinct and training, tearing through anyone who came at her. She didn't see the one-eyed leader break through the line. Didn't see it heading straight for the group of civilians huddled near the last standing house. 12 people, mostly women and children, too terrified to run. But then she did see it, and her heart stopped. The massive wolf stalked toward them, taking its time, enjoying their fear. The warriors were too far away, too engaged with their own battles. No one was in position to stop it, no one except her. Elara ran. Not toward safety, not toward backup. Straight at the one-eyed monster that outweighed her by 200 pounds and had probably killed more opponents than she'd ever seen. She hit it at full speed, driving her shoulder into its ribs. The impact jarred through her entire body, reopening her wound. Blood soaked her fur. The leader rounded on her, snarling. Up close, it smelled like death and rot and madness. It was going to kill her. She didn't care. She went for its remaining good eye, her claws raking across its face. It howled, rearing back. She used the moment to get inside its guard, teeth finding purchase on its throat. Not deep enough to kill, but enough to hurt. It shook her off like she weighed nothing. She hit the ground hard, ribs screaming. The leader loomed over her, jaws opening. Then Kael was there. He came out of nowhere, a black missile of fur and fury, and his jaws closed around the leader's throat. Not playing, not testing, killing. The one-eyed wolf tried to fight back, but Kael was relentless. He drove it to the ground, his weight crushing down, his teeth finding the jugular. Blood sprayed across the dirt. The leader's thrashing slowed, stopped. Kael held on for another 10 seconds, making sure. Then he released and lifted his head, blood dripping from his muzzle. The remaining rogues saw their leader fall. Some tried to run. None made it. The battle was over in less than 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. Elara shifted back to human, naked and shaking and covered in blood, most of it not hers. Around her, warriors were doing the same, checking each other for injuries, counting the living and the dead. They'd lost 3.
3 of Kael's warriors who wouldn't go home tonight. But they'd saved the civilians, all 12 of them. Kael shifted back, his chest heaving. His eyes found Elara across the blood-soaked ground. She expected anger. She'd broken formation, acted without orders, risked everything for people she didn't know. Instead, he just looked tired. "Get the civilians to safety," he ordered Lyssa. "Burn the rogue bodies. Our dead go home with honor." "Yes, sir." Kael walked to Elara. Blood covered both of them. "You're hurt." "I'm fine." "Your stitches are torn." "I said I'm fine." He grabbed her arm, not rough, but firm. "Stop being stubborn and let me—" "I did what I had to do," she interrupted. "Those people would have died." "I know." His grip loosened. "I know." Something in his voice made her look up. He was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "You're exactly what I thought you were," he said quietly. "The kind of person who can't watch someone suffer without trying to help, even when it's stupid, even when it might cost you everything." Is that a compliment or a criticism? Both. He let go of her arm. "Come on, let's get you patched up, again." They were halfway back to Ironhold, the injured being carried on makeshift stretchers, when the messenger caught up with them. A young woman, barely out of her teens, running flat out. She skidded to a stop in front of Kael, gasping, "Your Majesty, trouble at the compound." Kael's entire body tensed. "What kind of trouble?" "It's Ashenmore. They didn't wait for your answer." She paused, trying to catch her breath. "Lord Dorian Hale is at the gates with 50 armed warriors. He's demanding a formal hearing before the entire pack. He says if you refuse, he'll call for a vote of no confidence in your leadership among the Eastern Territories." The words fell like stones into water. Kael's jaw tightened. "When?" "They arrived an hour ago. They're waiting." "Of course they are." He looked at his warriors, exhausted, bloody, some barely able to walk. Then he looked at Elara. "This is about you. He's using you to challenge my authority." "Then let me face him," Elara said. "Alone. I'll tell him I came willingly, that you didn't steal me, that I choose to be here." "It won't matter. He's not here for the truth. He's here to make me look weak, to show the other territories that I can be pushed." Kael's voice was hard. "This was always coming. He just picked his moment." "So what do we do?" "We give him his hearing." Kael turned to the group. "Double time back to the compound. Walking wounded, stay with Lyssa. Everyone else, with me. We're not giving Ashenmore the satisfaction of seeing us limp home." They ran. By the time they reached Ironhold, Elara's vision was blurring from pain and exhaustion. The gates were open, and the entire compound had gathered, hundreds of people, all watching. In front of them stood Dorian and his warriors, all armed, all looking fresh and ready. Dorian stood at the center, arms crossed. He looked older than she remembered. Harder. When he saw her, his expression didn't change. Kael didn't slow down. He walked straight toward Dorian, blood still coating his skin, and stopped 5 feet away. "You've got some nerve showing up at my gates with an army." "I've got a legal claim," Dorian replied coolly. "Elara Vance left Ashenmore under false pretenses. The council demands her return. She left because you humiliated her and tried to throw her away like garbage. I enforced pack law. That's my duty." "Your duty," Kael said, his voice dropping dangerously low, "was to protect members of your pack, not sacrifice them for your ambition. You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Kael took a step closer. "You saw what she was, saw that silver marking, and you panicked, because you knew that if the pack realized what she was worth, they'd question why you were second and not her. So you manufactured charges, turned her into a liability, and got rid of the threat." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Dorian's jaw clenched. "Those are serious accusations. Prove me wrong." "I don't have to prove anything. She's Ashenmore property." "She's not property." Kael's voice cracked like a whip. "She's a person, and she made her choice. She stays here." "Then you leave me no option." Dorian raised his voice, addressing the crowd. "I formally challenge King Kael Draven's authority over the Eastern Territories on grounds of territorial raiding and violation of pack sovereignty. I call for a formal trial by council vote." The crowd erupted. Some people shouting support for Kael, others calling for fairness, for process. Kael held up one hand. Silence fell. "You want a trial?" he said quietly. "Fine, but not by council vote. The old way. You and me. Tomorrow at dawn. Winner takes everything. Her, the territories, all of it. Dorian smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Agreed. Kael, no. Elara started forward, but Rhea grabbed her arm. Don't, Rhea whispered. You'll make it worse. Kael turned to look at Elara one last time. His eyes held something she couldn't name. Determination, maybe, or resignation. Winner takes everything, he repeated. Then to the crowd, tomorrow we settle this. Until then, Ashen Moor's warriors are guests. Anyone who lays a hand on them answers to me. He walked away, and the crowd parted for him like water. Elara stood there, blood drying on her skin, watching him go, her heart hammering against her ribs. Tomorrow, Kael would fight Dorian to the death, because of her. And she had no idea how to stop it. Elara didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kael's face when he'd accepted Dorian's challenge. That calm resignation, like he'd been waiting for this moment all along. She paced her small room until her legs ached, then paced some more. The compound had gone quiet hours ago, but she could feel the tension humming through the walls. Everyone knew what tomorrow meant. Everyone was waiting. Around midnight, she gave up on rest entirely and slipped out of her room. The corridors were dark, lit only by occasional torches. Her bare feet made no sound on the cold stone. She found herself at Kael's door without consciously deciding to go there. She raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. What was she going to say? Don't fight for me? Run away? Both options were useless. Kael had made his decision, and from what she'd learned about him over the past month, he didn't make them lightly. The door opened before she could knock. Kael stood there, shirtless, a bandage wrapped around his ribs from where the rogue leader had caught him. His hair was loose, falling around his face. He looked tired. Couldn't sleep either? He asked. You knew I was here. Heard you pacing in the hallway for 5 minutes. He stepped back. Come in. His room was larger than hers, but just as sparse. A bed, a desk covered in maps, a weapons rack. A single window looked out over the compound walls toward the forest. You shouldn't fight him, Elara said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. This is wrong. I'm not worth this. Kael moved to the window, staring out at the darkness. We've had this conversation, and we're having it again. Dorian's good, really good. He trained with Ashen Moor's best warriors for 10 years. He's fast, he's strategic, and he fights dirty when he needs to. So do I. Kael, Elara. He turned to face her. This fight was always coming. Maybe not today, maybe not over you, but eventually. The Eastern Territories have been restless for months. Ashen Moor's been pushing boundaries, testing my authority. If I back down now, if I show weakness, every other pack will see it. They'll think I can be challenged, pushed, defeated. He paused. I can't let that happen. So this is about politics, about power. Everything is about power. You know that. His voice softened slightly. But it's also about you, about what's right. Dorian threw you away, and now he wants you back because it's convenient for him. Because taking you from me makes him look strong. I won't give him that satisfaction. Even if it kills you. Even then, she wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see how senseless this was. But she also understood. In this world, in these territories, backing down meant death. If not today, then eventually. Weakness was a disease, and it spread fast. There has to be another way, she said quietly. If you think of one, I'm listening. She didn't have an answer, not yet. Kael crossed the room and put his hands on her shoulders. The touch was gentle, steadying. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be hard enough without you exhausting yourself worrying. I don't want you to die for me. Then don't let me. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Stay alive. Prove that all of this was worth it. Before she could respond, he guided her toward the door. Go, I need to prepare. She left, but sleep still wouldn't come. Instead, she found herself walking through the compound, past the barracks where warriors slept, past the healing hall where the wounded from today's battle lay recovering. She ended up at the training yard, standing in the center where she'd fought so many times over the past month. Can't sleep either? She turned. Lyssa stood at the edge of the yard, arms crossed. The older woman looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. No, Elara admitted. Lissa walked over, her boots crunching on the packed dirt. For a moment, they stood in silence. "You blame yourself," Lissa said. It wasn't a question. "I am to blame. If I hadn't come here..." Dorian would have found another excuse. Men like him always do. Lissa's voice was hard. "He's ambitious, hungry. Kale represents everything he wants to be. Powerful, respected, in control. This fight was inevitable. But it's happening now because of me. It's happening now because Dorian is impatient and stupid." Lissa looked at her. "You want to know what I think? I think you've been handed a raw deal from the start. Your pack threw you away, the man you trusted betrayed you, and now you're stuck watching two alphas tear each other apart over who gets to claim you. That's not your fault. That's just what happens when you're caught between powerful men who can't see past their own egos." The words should have been comforting. They weren't. "I have to do something," Elara said. "Like what? Throw yourself at Dorian's feet? Beg him to call it off?" Lissa shook her head. "He wouldn't care. This isn't about you anymore. It's about territory, power, pride. You're just the symbol they're fighting over." "Then I'll stop being a symbol." "How?" Elara didn't answer. An idea was forming, dangerous and probably stupid, but it was better than standing here doing nothing. "I need to see the Ashenmoor warriors," she said. "Where are they staying?" Lissa's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because maybe there's a way to end this without blood. You think you can talk Dorian out of this fight? You couldn't talk sense into him when you were together. What makes you think he'll listen now?" "I'm not going to talk to Dorian." Elara met Lissa's gaze. "I'm going to talk to his warriors, the ones who came with him. Some of them know me, know what really happened in Ashenmoor. If I can get them to speak up, they won't betray their commander. Maybe not, but they might tell the truth if given the chance." Elara's jaw set. "It's worth trying." Lissa studied her for a long moment. Then she sighed. "They're in the guest barracks, East Wing. But Elara, if this backfires, if you make things worse, Kyle won't be able to protect you." "I know." "Good. Then go, before I change my mind about telling you." The guest barracks were guarded, but the sentries recognized Elara and let her pass after a moment's hesitation. Inside, the Ashenmoor warriors were spread out across the common room, some sleeping, some sharpening weapons, some talking in low voices. They all looked up when she entered. Silence fell like a weight. Elara scanned the faces, looking for anyone she knew. There, in the corner, a woman with short dark hair and a scar across her cheek. Mara. They'd trained together for 3 years, had shared meals, had covered each other during patrol exercises. "Mara," Elara said. "Can I talk to you?" Mara looked uncomfortable. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please, just 5 minutes." After a long pause, Mara stood and followed her outside. They walked a short distance from the barracks, out of earshot. "What do you want?" Mara asked, but her voice wasn't hostile, just wary. "The truth," Elara said. "What really happened after I left? What did Dorian tell everyone?" Mara looked away. "He said you ran, that you couldn't handle being judged, so you fled with the first powerful man who showed you attention." "That's not what happened." "I know." Mara's voice was quiet. "I was there, Elara. I saw your shift. I saw what you are. And I saw the way Dorian looked at you afterward, like you'd betrayed him by being something he couldn't control. Then why are you here? Why are you following him?" "Because he's my commander. Because I don't have a choice." Mara finally met her eyes. "But for what it's worth, I never thought you were a coward. Most of us didn't. We couldn't say anything. Dorian made it clear that anyone who questioned his version of events would face discipline. He's going to fight Kyle tomorrow. To the death." "I know. If Kyle dies, do you really think Dorian will be a better leader? Do you think he'll protect the territories? Or will he just use the power to climb higher?" Mara's jaw tightened. "What do you want me to do? Stand up in front of everyone and call my commander a liar? That's a death sentence." "Not if others stand with you. Not if enough people speak the truth that he can't silence all of you. You're asking us to commit mutiny. I'm asking you to do what's right." Elara stepped closer. "You know what Dorian is? You've seen him sacrifice people who are inconvenient. How long before it's you on that post? How long before he decides you know too much or ask too many questions?" Mara was quiet for a long time. Around them, the compound slept, unaware of the conversation happening in the shadows. Even if I wanted to help, Mara said finally, it wouldn't be enough. Dorian has the Council's support. He has the backing of 3 allied packs. My word against his means nothing. Then don't make it your word against his. Make it the truth against his lies. Elara grabbed Mara's arm. The trial is public. Everyone will be there. Kael's people, your people, representatives from other territories. If even a few voices stand up and say what really happened, it creates doubt. And doubt is all we need. Doubt doesn't stop a fight to the death. No. But it changes what the fight means. It stops being about honor and starts being about ego. And people don't follow leaders whose fights are only about ego. Mara pulled her arm free. You're asking a lot. I know. I need to think about it. We don't have time. I said I need to think. Mara's voice was firm. Come back in 2 hours. I'll have an answer then. Elara nodded and watched Mara disappear back into the barracks. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. It was a chance. She spent the next 2 hours pacing again, this time in the courtyard near the guest barracks. The sky was starting to lighten when Mara finally emerged. She wasn't alone. 4 other warriors came with her, 2 men and 2 women, all people Elara recognized from her time in Ashenmoor. Not friends exactly, but not enemies either. We'll speak, Mara said without preamble. At the trial, when the accusations are made, we'll tell the truth about what happened that night, about the shift, about Dorian's reaction, about the Council's bias. Relief flooded through Elara. Thank you. Don't thank us yet. This might not work. Dorian's smart. He'll try to discredit us, paint us as traitors or conspirators. It could make everything worse. Or it could save 2 lives, Elara said. Maybe, Mara glanced back at the others. But if this goes wrong, we're all dead. You understand that? I do. Good. Then let's hope your faith in the truth is justified. Dawn came too fast. The entire compound assembled in the central arena, a flat circle of packed earth surrounded by rising stone tiers where hundreds of people could watch. It was designed for exactly this purpose: trials, challenges, public judgments, the place where disputes were settled the old way. Elara stood near the front with Lyssa and the other council members. Across the arena, Dorian stood with his warriors, looking calm and confident. He'd stripped to the waist, showing off the lean muscle he'd honed through years of training. He looked every bit the warrior he claimed to be. Kael stood alone on the opposite side. He'd also removed his shirt, and Elara could see the fresh bandages covering his ribs from yesterday's fight. He looked tired, but his eyes were clear, focused. Between them, an elder from a neutral territory, a white-haired man named Corvin, stood as adjudicator. His voice carried across the arena. We are gathered to witness a formal challenge under the old laws. Dorian Hale of Ashenmoor accuses King Kael Draven of territorial raiding and unlawful abduction. Kael Draven denies these charges and accepts trial by combat. The combat will be to submission or death. Winner takes all disputed claims, including the fate of Elara Vance. He paused. Does either party wish to speak before we begin? I do, Elara called out. Every head turned toward her. Kael's eyes widened slightly. Dorian frowned. Corvin looked surprised. This is highly irregular. The accused and accuser have already... I'm the one being fought over, Elara interrupted, stepping forward into the arena. Don't I get a say in this? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The challenge has been issued and accepted, Corvin said carefully. Unless both parties agree to hear you, let her speak, Kael said. His voice was calm, but Elara could see the tension in his shoulders. All eyes turned to Dorian. He looked irritated, but nodded. Fine, let's hear what she has to say. Elara walked to the center of the arena. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She'd never been good at public speaking, had always preferred action to words. But this wasn't about preference. This was about survival. Dorian claims I was abducted, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. That's a lie. I left Ashenmoor willingly after being humiliated, judged unfairly, and thrown away by the man I trusted. I came here because Kael offered me a choice: stay where I was hated or leave and start over. That's not abduction. That's mercy. You were under formal judgment, Dorian called out. You didn't have the right to leave. I had the right to choose my own fate. You took that away when you accused me of crimes I didn't commit. You falsified records.
My mother filed those records when I was 6 years old. I didn't even know about them until you decided they were convenient leverage. Elara's voice shook, but she pushed through it. You saw what I was when I shifted. You saw the silver marking, and you panicked, because if the pack knew what I was worth, they'd question why someone like me was with someone like you. The crowd stirred. Dorian's face darkened. Careful, he said quietly. You're making accusations you can't prove.
Can't I?
Elara turned to face the Ashenmoor warriors.
Mara, you were there. Tell them what happened.
For a moment, nothing happened.
Elara's breath caught. Had she been wrong? Had Mara changed her mind?
Then Mara stepped forward. She's telling the truth, Mara said. Her voice was steady. I witnessed the shift. Elara transformed into a silver-marked wolf, a bloodline we all thought was extinct. The reaction from Dorian wasn't relief or pride. It was fear. I saw it in his face. Within an hour, he'd issued orders that no one was to speak about what they'd seen. He controlled the narrative from the start.
That's a lie, Dorian snapped. I saw it too, one of the men said, stepping up beside Mara. He's right. Dorian suppressed the truth because it threatened his position. 2 more warriors joined them. Then a third. The crowd erupted, people shouting questions, demanding answers. Corvin called for order, but his voice was drowned out. Dorian's face had gone white with rage. Traitors, all of you. When we get back to Ashenmoor, you won't make it back to Ashenmoor, a new voice said. Everyone turned. An older man pushed through the Ashenmoor contingent, Councilman Garrett, the one who'd presided over Elara's trial. He looked grim. I'm done protecting you, Dorian, Garrett said. I went along with your version of events because it was easier, because it served the Council's purposes. But I won't watch you start a war based on lies. He looked at Corvin. Everything the girl said is true. Dorian manipulated the trial, suppressed evidence, and used his position to eliminate a threat to his ambitions. The Council was complicit. I was complicit. Silence fell over the arena, complete and absolute. Dorian stood frozen, his carefully constructed narrative crumbling around him. This doesn't change anything, he said finally, his voice hard. The challenge stands. I still have the right.
No, Kael said. He stepped forward and the crowd parted for him. You have no rights here. Your challenge was based on a lie. You claimed I abducted her. You claimed I violated pack sovereignty. But she left willingly, and you had no legitimate authority over her. Your entire case is built on deception. I still challenge your authority. On what grounds? That I took in someone your pack threw away? That I gave refuge to a woman you betrayed? Kael's voice was cold. You have no grounds. You have no case. You have nothing but your pride and your ambition. Dorian's hand moved toward the knife at his belt. Then we fight anyway. Right here, right now, you and me. No, Elara said. She stepped between them. No more fighting. This isn't your decision, Dorian snarled. Yes, it is. You said this was about me, about reclaiming what you lost, but I was never yours to lose. She looked him in the eye. I don't want revenge, Dorian. I don't want to see you dead. I just want you gone. You don't get to decide. She doesn't, Kael interrupted. But I do. He addressed Corvin and the assembled crowd. Dorian Hale came here under false pretenses, issued a challenge based on lies, and attempted to manipulate territorial politics for personal gain. As king of the Northern Territories, I have the authority to pass judgment. He turned to Dorian. You're stripped of your rank as second of Ashenmoor. You're exiled to the borderlands for 5 years. If you return to any established pack territory before that time, you'll be executed on sight. Your warriors are free to choose, return to Ashenmoor, stay here, or follow you into exile. But you go alone unless they choose otherwise. Dorian looked like he'd been struck. You can't. I just did. Kael's voice was final. Guards. Escort him to the border. Give him 3 days' supplies. After that, he's on his own. 2 of Kael's warriors stepped forward. Dorian looked around wildly, searching for support. But the Ashenmoor warriors who'd come with him were either looking away or stepping back. No one moved to help him. This isn't over, Dorian said, but his voice had lost its power. I'll come back. You'll survive, Kael said. Or you won't. I don't particularly care. Now get out of my territory. They dragged him away.
He fought at first, shouting threats and curses, but eventually he went quiet, defeated. The crowd began to disperse, people talking in excited whispers. Garrett approached Elara, looking older than he had minutes before. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I'm sorry. You deserved better than what we gave you." Elara didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Garrett turned to Kael. "Ashenmore will honor your judgment. Dorian's exile is legitimate. We'll send word to the other territories." "See that you do." Kael's voice was hard. "And Garrett? This better not happen again. If I find out Ashenmore is abusing its people, we're going to have a much longer conversation." "Understood." When everyone had cleared out, Elara found herself alone in the arena with Kael. The sun had fully risen, painting everything gold. "You took a hell of a risk," Kael said. "If those warriors hadn't backed you up, they did. But if they hadn't, you would have undermined everything, made me look weak, given Dorian ammunition." "I know." Elara met his gaze. "But I wasn't going to let you die for me. Not when there was another way." Kael was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "You know what the most frustrating thing about you is?" "What?" "You're right too often." He closed the distance between them. "You saw a path I didn't. You took a chance most people wouldn't, and you stopped a war before it started." "We stopped a war," she corrected. "No, you did that." His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "You're not broken, Elara. You're not worthless. You're exactly what I thought you were the first time I saw you. Someone rare. Someone worth fighting for." Her breath caught. "Kael, I'm not good with words," he said quietly. "I'm better with action, so let me show you." He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was fierce and desperate and full of everything they'd both been holding back. Elara's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and for a moment the whole world narrowed to this, his mouth on hers, his hands in her hair, the solid warmth of him against her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he said. "Not as a refugee, not as someone I rescued. Stay as my partner. Help me build something better than what either of us came from." Elara looked up at him, this man who'd walked into her worst moment and offered her a way out, who'd fought for her, protected her, believed in her when no one else did. "Yes," she said. "I'll stay." Around them, Ironhold hummed with life. Warriors training, children playing, people living without fear. And for the first time since she'd left Ashenmore, Elara felt like she might actually belong somewhere, like she might finally be home. The weeks following Dorian's exile passed in a blur of motion and change. Word spread fast through the territories. How Elara Vance had stopped a war with truth instead of violence. How the silver-marked wolf had proven herself worth more than the man who'd tried to throw her away. Some called it justice. Others called it mercy. A few called it weakness, though those voices grew quieter as time went on. Elara didn't care what they called it. She was too busy learning what it meant to actually belong somewhere. Kael hadn't lied when he'd asked her to help him build something better. He put her to work immediately, not as decoration, not as a symbol, but as someone whose opinion mattered. She sat in on council meetings, listening to disputes about territory boundaries and trade agreements. She trained with the warriors, pushing herself harder than Lyssa demanded, earning respect one bruise at a time. She walked the compound at night, learning names, hearing stories, understanding the people she was now responsible for protecting. It wasn't easy. Nothing worth having ever was. 2 months after Dorian left, Elara stood in the council chamber facing her first real test as Kael's partner. The room was packed, not just with Kael's council, but with representatives from 6 different territories, all of them watching her with varying degrees of skepticism. The issue at hand was simple in theory, complicated in practice. 3 territories, Ashenmore, Blackwater, and Silverfen, wanted to renegotiate their alliance terms with Ironhold. They claimed Kael's protection agreements were too expensive, too restrictive. What they really wanted was to test whether the new power dynamic, with Elara now openly at Kael's side, had made him weaker. "The protection fees are reasonable," Marcus was saying, his voice tight with frustration. "They cover patrol costs, emergency response, and access to our training facilities. If anything, we're charging too little." "That's your perspective," countered a sharp-faced woman from Silverfen named Petra. From ours, we're paying for protection we rarely need while you expand your territory and influence. You needed it 3 months ago when that rogue pack tried to take your northern border, Lyssa shot back. Our warriors bled for your people. And we're grateful. But gratitude doesn't mean we should accept terms that were negotiated before the current leadership structure. Petra's eyes slid to Elara. No offense intended, but we don't know you. We don't know what influence you have here or whether King Kale's judgment has been compromised by personal attachments. The room went quiet. It was the question everyone had been dancing around for weeks. Was Kyle thinking clearly, or was he being led by something other than strategic sense? Elara felt every eye turn toward her. She could let Kyle answer, could stay silent and let the men and women with years of political experience handle it. But that wasn't who she was anymore.
You want to know if I'm a liability, Elara said, her voice steady. If my presence here makes Ironhold weaker, that's fair. You don't know me, so let me tell you what you do know. She stood moving to the map wall where colored pins marked territories and alliances.
2 months ago, this alliance was about to fracture over a lie. Dorian Hale nearly started a war that would have pulled in half the eastern territories, cost hundreds of lives, and destabilized trade routes that everyone here depends on. That didn't happen. Want to know why? She turned to face them. Because I stopped it. Not with violence, not by playing political games, by telling the truth and getting others to do the same. That's what I bring to this table, a refusal to accept convenient lies when truth is harder, but better. Pretty words, Petra said. But truth doesn't win wars. No, but it prevents stupid ones. Elara moved closer. You want to renegotiate terms? Fine. Let's renegotiate. But let's be honest about what we're really discussing here. You're not concerned about fees. You're concerned about whether Ironhold is still strong enough to be worth the investment, whether Kyle is still the leader you signed up to follow. She looked around the room, meeting each representative's eyes. He is. I haven't made him weaker. If anything, I've made him stronger, because now he has someone who'll tell him the truth even when it's inconvenient. Someone who'll push back when he's wrong. Someone who sees the people, not just the territories. She paused. You want proof? Look at the recruitment numbers. Look at how many warriors have requested transfers here in the past 2 months. Look at the trade agreements we've secured with territories that used to be neutral. The proof is in the results. Torrin spoke up from his seat. She's right. Our position has strengthened, not weakened. Diplomatically, militarily, economically, every metric shows improvement. Because people respect strength, Kyle added quietly. He'd been silent until now, letting Elara speak. And they respect leaders who make hard choices for the right reasons. Elara proved that when she chose justice over revenge. That's not weakness. That's the kind of strength that builds lasting alliances. Petra looked between them, something calculating in her expression. So the terms stay as they are? The terms are open for discussion, Elara said before Kyle could respond. We're not unreasonable. If you have legitimate concerns about costs or coverage, we'll listen. But if this is just about testing whether you can push us around, then no. The terms stand. And if we walk away from the alliance entirely, then you walk away. Hale's voice was matter-of-fact. We won't stop you, but you'll lose access to our trade routes, our warriors, our intelligence network. And when the next crisis comes, and it will, you'll face it alone. The room went silent. It was a gamble, and everyone knew it. If the 3 territories walked, others might follow. The alliance could crumble. But fear-based alliances always crumbled eventually anyway. After a long moment, a grizzled man from Blackwater, their representative, a former warrior named Cormac, cleared his throat. I've seen enough alliances fall apart because people were too proud to admit they needed help. This isn't one of those times. He looked at his fellow representatives. King Kyle's terms are fair. The woman's right. We're testing him because we're scared of change. That's not strategy. That's cowardice. Cormac, Petra started. I'm not finished. His voice hardened. Blackwater maintains the alliance, current terms, and if Silverfen wants to walk, that's their choice. But they walk alone. The Ashenmore representative, a younger man who'd replaced Garrett on the council, nodded slowly. Ashenmore stands with Ironhold. We owe them that much after recent events. All eyes turned to Petra. She looked furious, but she wasn't stupid. Walking away now would isolate Silverfen completely. Fine, she bit out. Current terms. For now. Good, Kael said. Then we're done here. Marcus, work with each territory to address any specific concerns they have about patrol coverage. Torin, review the intelligence sharing protocols and make sure everyone has access to current threat assessments. Dismissed. The representatives filed out, some looking relieved, others still skeptical. When the room finally cleared, leaving just Kael, Elara, and the council, Lyssa actually smiled. Well, she said, that was either brilliant or insane. Probably both, Elara admitted. Her hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. You took a hell of a risk, Marcus said, but he didn't sound disapproving. If they'd called our bluff— It wasn't a bluff, Kael interrupted. Every word she said was true. We're stronger now than we were 3 months ago. The numbers prove it. The numbers help, Torin agreed, but what really matters is perception. And right now, people are starting to see you two as a unit, a partnership. That carries weight. It also makes us a target, Lyssa pointed out. People who want to challenge Kael now have to go through both of you. That doubles the complexity of any assassination attempt, but it also means you're both always at risk. I can live with that, Elara said. Can you? Lyssa's gaze was sharp. Because living with risk and surviving it are different things. You've been lucky so far. But luck runs out. Then we'll be smart, Elara said. And when smart isn't enough, we'll be ruthless. Lyssa studied her for a moment, then nodded. Good. You're learning. That night, Elara found Kael on the wall overlooking the compound. He stood at the highest point, staring out at the forest that stretched to the horizon. The moon was full, painting everything silver. You okay? She asked, joining him. Thinking. About? About how different things look from up here compared to 6 months ago. He glanced at her. You were good today. In the meeting, you didn't back down. I learned from the best. You learned from yourself. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. I gave you an opportunity. You made it into something more. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the compound below. People moved through the streets, warriors changing shifts, families heading home from the communal kitchens, children playing one last game before bed. Life, continuing despite the threats and politics and constant struggle. Do you ever regret it? Elara asked quietly. Taking me from Ashenmoor? Everything that came after? No. His answer was immediate. Do you? She thought about it, really thought about it. 2 months ago, she'd been broken, betrayed, convinced she was worthless. Now she stood beside a king, helping lead territories, making decisions that affected thousands of lives. No, she said. I don't. Good. He pulled her closer. Because I'm not done with you yet. 3 weeks later, everything changed again. A messenger arrived from the Western Territories, a region that had remained neutral in most conflicts, preferring isolation to alliance. The message was brief and urgent. A new threat was rising. Something worse than rogues, worse than territorial disputes. A group calling themselves the Broken Chain, led by exiled wolves and outcasts from a dozen different packs, was gathering strength. They weren't interested in territory or trade. They wanted to tear down the entire pack system, to create chaos, and let the strongest survive. And they were heading east. The council met immediately. Maps were spread across the table, reports analyzed, scouts dispatched. The news got worse with every update. The Broken Chain had already destroyed 2 small settlements, killed anyone who resisted, and absorbed anyone desperate enough to join them. Their numbers were growing daily. How many? Kael asked, his voice tight. At least 200, Torin said grimly. Possibly more. They move fast, hit hard, and don't leave witnesses. Why haven't we heard about this before now? Because the Western Territories tried to handle it themselves. By the time they realized they couldn't, it was too late to stop the growth. Torin's finger traced a line on the map. They'll hit the borderlands in 3 days, maybe 4. After that, they'll be in our territory. We need to evacuate the outer settlements, Marcus said. Pull everyone back to defensible positions. That's hundreds of people, Lyssa objected. Where do we put them? Here, in the compound, in the barracks, the training yards, anywhere with walls. And what about supplies? We don't have enough food stored for that kind of influx, especially not with winter 3 months away. The argument spiraled, voices rising, no clear solution emerging. Elara listened, her mind racing. This was different from anything they'd faced before. This wasn't about politics or personal vendettas. This was survival at its most basic. Fight or die. "We can't just defend," she said, cutting through the noise. Everyone turned to look at her. "If we pull back and wait for them to come to us, we're giving them the advantage. They choose the time and place of the fight. They control the pace." She moved to the map. "We need to hit them first, before they reach the borderlands, while they're still spread out and overconfident." "That's suicide," Marcus said flatly. "They outnumber us 3-1, maybe more. Not if we get help." Elara looked at Kyle. "The alliance we just saved, Ashenmoor, Blackwater, Silverfen, they're all at risk too. This isn't just our problem. If the broken chain tears through the eastern territories, no one is safe." "They won't commit warriors to an offensive action," Torrin said. "It's too risky. They'll defend their own territory and hope the threat passes." "Then we convince them," Elara said. "We show them that the only way to survive is to work together. That divided, we all fall. United, we stand a chance." Kale was quiet for a long moment, staring at the map. Then he looked up at his council. "Send messengers to every allied territory. Emergency summit, tomorrow night. Everyone who wants to survive this needs to be there." "And if they refuse?" Lyssa asked. "Then we fight alone and hope it's enough." The summit was held in Ironhold's Great Hall, and it was standing room only. Representatives from 15 territories crammed into the space, all of them scared, all of them looking for someone to tell them what to do. Kyle stood at the head of the room, Elara beside him. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "The broken chain is coming," he said bluntly. "In less than a week, they'll be at our borders. In 2 weeks, they could be tearing through every territory in this room. Separately, we can't stop them. Together, we might have a chance." "You're asking us to commit warriors to an offensive strike," Petra from Silverfen said. "That leaves our own territories vulnerable." "Your territories are already vulnerable," Elara shot back. "The broken chain doesn't negotiate, doesn't take prisoners, doesn't respect territory lines. If you think defending your borders will be enough, you're wrong. They'll hit you one at a time, and you'll fall one by one." "So what's your plan?" Cormac from Blackwater asked. He sounded more curious than skeptical. Kale gestured to the map. "We gather every available warrior from the Alliance. 400, maybe 500 strong. We march west and hit them before they finish organizing. Catch them between territories, where they're exposed. Hit fast, hit hard, and break their leadership. Without leadership, they're just a mob. Mobs scatter." "That's a huge risk," someone said from the back. "Living is a risk," Elara said. "But at least this way we're choosing how we fight instead of waiting to be victims." "And who leads this combined force?" Petra asked. Her tone suggested she already knew the answer and didn't like it. "I do," Kale said. "Unless someone wants to challenge that." Silence. "Then we vote," Kale continued. "Every territory gets one voice. Commit warriors to the joint force or defend alone. Your choice." The vote took an hour. There were arguments, debates, threats, and ultimatums. But in the end, every single territory voted to join. Even Petra. "Don't make us regret this," she said as she cast her vote. "I won't," Kyle promised. 3 days later, the combined force marched west. 470 warriors from 15 territories, all wearing their own colors but fighting under one banner. It was the largest unified force the territories had seen in a generation. Elara marched near the front with Kyle, her sword strapped to her back, her wolf coiled and ready beneath her skin. Around her, warriors moved with grim determination. Some were seasoned fighters who'd seen dozens of battles. Others were barely trained, volunteers who'd joined because they had no choice. They found the broken chain 2 days into the march, camped in a river valley with no walls, no organization, just scattered tents and cook fires. They looked exactly like what they were. A collection of outcasts who'd never learned to work together, held together only by a leader's charisma and shared anger. Kyle surveyed the camp from a ridgeline above. "They're overconfident. They don't even have sentries posted on this side." "Then we use that," Lyssa said. She'd positioned archers along the ridge, all of them waiting for the signal. "Where's their leader?" Elara asked, scanning the camp. "The one holding them together?" Torrin pointed to the largest tent near the center. "There. That's where the scout said he stays. Goes by the name Ravek. former alpha from one of the northern packs, exiled for killing his own council.
Lovely, Elara muttered.
Kale turned to face the assembled warriors. We hit them in 3 waves. First wave, archers. Thin their numbers, create chaos. Second wave, ground forces. Hit them while they're confused. Third wave, me, Elara, and the senior warriors. We take out Ravik. Without him, they fall apart. What if he's stronger than expected? Someone asked. Then we adapt. Kale's voice was cold. But we don't stop. Not until this is over. The attack began at dusk. The first wave of arrows rained down on the camp like deadly hail, striking tents, campfires, and unprepared warriors. Screams erupted. People ran in every direction, some trying to shift, others scrambling for weapons. The second wave charged down the hillside, a wall of warriors crashing into the chaos. The fighting was brutal, immediate, and one-sided. The broken chain fighters were strong individually, but they had no coordination, no tactics. They fought like rabid animals instead of soldiers. Elara shifted mid-charge, her wolf tearing through the camp toward the central tent. Warriors scattered out of her way, some in fear, some in recognition. The silver streak in her fur marked her as clearly as a banner. She reached the tent just as a massive gray wolf exploded through the fabric. Ravik. He was huge, even bigger than Kael, with scars covering his body and eyes that held nothing but rage. He lunged at her without warning. She barely dodged, his teeth snapping shut inches from her throat. She countered, going for his legs, trying to knock him off balance. But he was too experienced, too fast. He twisted, caught her shoulder with his claws, and sent her tumbling. Pain exploded through her. She rolled, got her feet under her, and saw him coming again. Then Kael hit him from the side like a battering ram. The 2 massive wolves collided, snarling and snapping, a blur of black and gray fur. They were evenly matched in size, but Kael had something Ravik didn't: focus, purpose. He wasn't fighting out of rage. He was fighting to protect. Elara circled, looking for an opening. When Ravik overextended trying to get Kael's throat, she took it. Her jaws closed around Ravik's hind leg, crushing down with everything she had. Bone cracked. Ravik howled and rounded on her, fury in his eyes, but the injury had slowed him just enough. Kael didn't waste the opening. His jaws found Ravik's throat, and this time he didn't let go. The fight lasted another 10 seconds. Then Ravik went still. Kael released him and shifted back to human, blood covering his chest. Around them, the battle was ending. The broken chain warriors were surrendering, scattering, or lying dead. Without their leader, they'd lost all cohesion. It was over.
Elara shifted back, her shoulder bleeding, but not badly. She looked at Kael, at the exhausted warriors around them, at the carnage they'd created to survive. "We did it," she said. "Yeah." Kael's voice was rough. "We did." The journey back to Ironhold took 3 days. They moved slowly, carrying wounded, processing prisoners who'd surrendered, and sending scouts ahead to make sure the threat was truly ended. By the time they reached the compound, word had already spread.
The territories had won. Together. The celebration lasted 2 days. Warriors from 15 different packs drinking together, sharing stories, building friendships that would have been impossible months ago. The alliance wasn't just political anymore. It was personal. On the 3rd day, Kael called another summit. This time, the mood was different, hopeful instead of fearful. "We proved something," Kael said, addressing the gathered representatives, "that we're stronger together than apart. That unity isn't weakness, it's survival." He paused. "I'm proposing we formalize this, not just an alliance, a true union, shared resources, shared defense, shared leadership." "A federation," Torrens supplied. "Exactly." Kael looked around the room. "Each territory keeps its autonomy, its culture, its leaders. But we operate under a unified council for matters of defense, trade, and justice. No single territory can dominate. No single leader can abuse their power. We build something that lasts beyond any one of us." The debate was fierce, but shorter than expected. In the end, 12 of the 15 territories voted yes. The Northern Federation was born. 6 months later, Elara stood in the Great Hall wearing formal clothes that still felt foreign, a dark leather vest over a white shirt, practical but ceremonial. Her silver-streaked hair was braided back, and on her shoulder she wore the mark of the Federation, a silver wolf encircled by stars.
The hall was packed with people from every territory, all of them there to witness the formal establishment of the Federation Council. Kael stood beside her, wearing similar clothes, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Ready?" he asked quietly. "No," she admitted, "but let's do it anyway." They walked to the platform together. The crowd quieted. Corvin, serving as ceremonial elder, spoke first. 6 months ago, we faced destruction. Today, we face a future built on cooperation and mutual respect. The Northern Federation exists because of hard choices made by brave people. None braver than these two. He gestured to Kyle and Elara. King Kael Draven led us through crisis with wisdom and strength. Elara Vance showed us that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right even when you're terrified. Together, they transformed weakness into strength, division into unity, and betrayal into triumph. He turned to Elara. The council has voted unanimously. Elara Vance, you are hereby recognized as Queen of the Northern Federation, equal partner to King Kael Draven in all matters of governance and leadership. The crowd erupted in cheers. Elara's throat tightened. Queen. Her. The girl who'd been thrown away, humiliated, told she was worthless. Kael took her hand, squeezing gently. You earned this, he said quietly. Every bit of it. She squeezed back, unable to speak. After the ceremony, after the endless congratulations and formal greetings, Elara finally escaped to the wall overlooking the compound, the same spot where she'd stood months ago, uncertain and afraid. Kael found her there. Hiding? He asked. Breathing, she corrected. He joined her at the wall, looking out at the compound, larger now, more crowded, buzzing with life from a dozen different territories. You know what I realized today? He said. What? That I didn't save you in Ashenmoor. You saved yourself. I just gave you the space to do it. Elara looked at him, this man who'd seen her at her lowest and believed she was more than the wreckage. We saved each other, she said. Yeah, he smiled. We did. In the distance, a wolf howled, not in challenge or warning, but in simple acknowledgement of the night. Another wolf answered. Then another. The sound built and spread, a chorus of voices from every corner of the territory. Elara closed her eyes and let her own wolf answer. The howl rose from deep in her chest, powerful and clear, and she felt Kael's wolf join hers. Their voices intertwined, becoming something more together than either could be alone. When the howling faded, Elara opened her eyes and looked at the compound below, at the life they'd built, the people they'd protected, the future they'd created from the ashes of betrayal and pain. She'd been thrown away once, cast aside as worthless by people who couldn't see what she was. Now she stood beside a king as his equal, not because someone gave her power, but because she'd proven, over and over, that she deserved it. The girl who'd been betrayed and broken had become a queen. And she was just getting started.